I didn't know exactly what to call this, but I easily could come up with the greatest example of it that everybody has experienced in their life. And that is when you got a boo-boo, you got a cut, you got a skinned knee, especially if that cuts on your leg where you're like a hairy animal or wherever it might be, where, you know, the Band-Aid like sticks to something. I guess hair is like the biggest deal. Don't you love the graphics of this? Um, Here's the question. By personality, some of this can be personality, but it's more important than personality. Are you gonna rip the Band-Aid off? Like rip it off so you feel it hard and then the pain's gone. Are you gonna slowly peel it back because you don't want to feel that pain of ripping it off? But each little slow thing hurts too, just doesn't hurt as badly, and you'd rather go slow. It's gonna last longer. It might be there till February, but which do you do? Now, that gets us to the thought, in any given circumstance in your life, whether it's dealing with a relationship or dealing with a work project or even changing some path in your career or whatever it is it better to just jump in and do it and take it all on and have the chaos and the pain and the blood and the sweat? Or is it better to take that in little steps? You know what? That's a good question. Because a lot of times people try to do something all at once and it is disastrous because they tried to do it all at once. They took on too much and they took it on too quickly and they failed because of it. One of my favorite verses, Jesus said, nobody builds a tower or a bridge or goes to war, does it without first, counting the costs. Because he said you don't get the bridge halfway built or the tower halfway built or the war halfway fought and you run out of money. You run out of bricks or whatever you're building, or you run out of bullets if you're fighting the war. And sometimes try to take on the whole thing without taking the steps involved, not a good thing. Not a good thing. Sometimes we wait around, there's other costs. So what I've done here is that, what about this? What if you hop into a relationship? Quickly or slowly? More and more and more of you, or less and less and less of you until there should be more of you? What about the confrontation with a person? What about changing your career? It means you gotta up and move. Or should we do this in steps and maybe mom moves or dad moves and the kids come later and we slowly, how do you make these decisions? They happen to us every day. So what I've done is I've got a few steps in here, and there's not a right or wrong because each one is different. And for whatever reason, sometimes people make different calls, even about the same thing. But I've just put in some, as you're making a decision, a few kind of questions to ask yourself as you're looking at a relationship or winding down something or moving or changing your career, or who knows, it could be anything. Anything that involves some kind of step you got to take, and you can take that pain in great measure now, or you can spread it out over time. All right, here we go. When to rip it off or when to do it in steps. Here's one thought. Number one, do it in steps, possibly, potentially, when each step is going to make you ready for the next step. See, we do things in steps when each step makes us ready for the next step, because it strengthens us, because we learn something, because we gain experience, we get critical mass, we shore up our skills, we're ready for the next one. We don't put a kid into school and in 1 year try to teach them everything and have them take the GED test at the end of a year. Now you spread this out, because basic math gets you ready for more complicated math. And you get into algebra, and then you get into geometry, and you get a trig. But if the steps hadn't prepared you, for the next one, then probably not ready. This is why, if you go back to my sort of writing history in the field of dating, which I went into kicking and screaming, it just seemed like to be such a big need. That's why I started writing books on that. And John Townsend and I wrote a book early on called Boundaries in Dating. And it's the only book we've ever like called out some sort of system by name, and said, no, we really, really disagree with this. And that was back when the whole courtship movement was going through areas of faith, and they were saying dating was a bad idea. Well, in my view, dating, the steps of a young person dating and the steps of growing in that and developing skills on it, it really prepares you in a number of ways in your people picking, for example, in your dating or in your relational skills, and figuring out what you want and don't want. All of these steps really prepare you for the next step. And that'd be an example where you do this step instead of, I've never had a date and then I'm going to hang out in, a bunch of teenagers in a youth group, and I've never had a date and I'm going to say, that's the one I want to marry, and go pick them and jump into. It just makes no sense. Anyway, there's other things like that. In fact, God, one of my favorite passages, God, when he led the Israelites into the promised land, he said, I'm not going to give it to you all at once. I want you to take it little by little, for a number of reasons. Little by little, you got to get strong enough to face what you're going to face, or you might have too much and then people come after you, or a bunch of stuff could happen. Little by little, so you get stronger, you get wiser, you get more experience. Sometimes you see people that they'll jump into businesses all at once, and they'll mortgage their house to go into business for themselves, and they'll buy a franchise, or they'll do something, but they've never done anything that would prepare them for that, and they fail, like a lot. But the people that do it step by step, they succeed because it prepares you. So that's the first idea. Will the steps prepare me, or am I just repeating steps? How about this one? We do things in steps gradually, when taking the step is going to enable me to understand whether or not I want to take the next step. That's sort of like dating as well. Go out on one date to find out if I want to go out on the next one. Or if you're deciding to change your career, you don't just say, I think I'd like to be a lawyer. So go to law school. Quit what I'm doing and go to law school. Well, what if I go to law school and I hate law school? I hate reading briefs. I always thought, I was an accounting finance major, and I always thought if I didn't do something somewhere in the golf business or the golf world, I would be a lawyer. I really enjoyed a lot about it. And I took a business law course in college, and I found out I hated reading briefs. It's so boring and voluminous and blech. I said, is this how I would spend a lot of my time? I don't want to do this. See that step, taking that little step, it informed me. I don't want to do this. How many people think they want to go into medicine until they go volunteer somewhere and find out I don't like being around blood all the time, you know? Or. All right. Not too long ago, I had a young man who's son of some friends, um, wanted to go in the field of psychology. And everybody was encouraging him to go. And great. I mean, he had good brains. He's a wonderful person. Um, lot of good reasons to do this. But when I started to talk to him, um, really, it was more of an idea and a concept. And I said, I wouldn't go to graduate school yet. I'd go get a job. I mean, I did this. I went and got a job for $3 an hour in a psych hospital for a year before I went after college, before I went to graduate school. And that step helped me know whether or not I wanted to continue in this profession. And he did that and he learned a lot, and that prepared him for the next step. And now he's a psychologist doing incredible, great work. But he's certain about it because he took the steps. So, how about this one? Here's another one. When doing it all at once is more painful, but it's tolerable. You rip the band-aid off, it's tolerable. Yes, really gonna hurt. You gotta bite the bullet, but then it is done and you are down the road. Get all the pain done. Well, if it's only gonna be because it hurts and it doesn't injure you, now that's a big difference. There's a big difference in doing something that's painful that injures me versus doing something that's painful that really heals me in some way or puts me in a better place. It's like pulling out a splinter. It's more painful to yank it out, but it immediately gets better. So get it done. I wrote a book called 9 Things You Simply Must Do, and one of them was called Pull the Tooth. Get it done. Get it over with. When doing it all at once is painful but standable, then I prefer to get it all done. Remember when I had my wisdom teeth out? You could go in for one at a time. But I thought, crap, I'm going to be miserable that day anyway. Let's just be really miserable and get all 4 of them ripped out. Get it all done. That's what I did. It turned out I was so miserable that when I came home, I passed out in front of the front door and fell forward, bonked my head on the door, and knocked myself unconscious. And my mother, I was in college at the time, my mother came out and I'm lying unconscious on the front steps, bloody, and she called an ambulance and I woke up in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. But anyway, I got it all done. The next day I was fine, and then I had no wisdom teeth. I didn't have to go back. So who cares? Got it all done. There's number 3. Number 4, when doing it all at once makes it done less well, then maybe you should take it in steps. Now, I am not giving orthopedic surgical advice here, but I can tell you the advice that I got when I had my knee replaced last summer. I have 2 bad knees. In fact, I'm going to have the second one replaced. And I knew that I would have to have the second one replaced at some point. And when I went to my surgeon, who is a very, very, very heralded guy, who's one of the ones that invented a lot of the devices that they put in your knee after they take your knee out in this internal amputation. This is the worst thing I've ever been through. But now I don't hurt on that knee. That's a good thing. But here's what I told him. I said, Doc, I mean, look at my other knee. What do you think? And he said, well, actually, the other one, the one we're not doing, that one's worse than the one we're doing. He said, but we don't diagnose by x-rays. I mean, it is worse, but it's not hurting you. And so why replace a knee that's not in pain? So he said, no, I think we do the left one because that's the one that's keeping you from being able to walk. And so I said, well, since the other one's worse anyway, let's do both of them. He said, I don't want to do that. He said, I do it. I do about, I think he told me about 15 of those a year. And this is somebody that does, I think, 900 in a year. He said, but I only do a handful of them for very specific reasons. And I said, why not? And here's what he told me. He said, because he said, this is a big deal when you cut out your knee joint. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, picture a Tootsie Roll and you just carve out a chunk and pull it out and stick in a cork. He said, I want all of the resources of the body available to heal that knee. I don't want to divide the resources of the body to heal that knee into having to heal two knees. And it will heal less well, less quickly, less strong. He said, I just don't like to do it. I said, okay. So when you do everything at once, sometimes it makes things turn out not as well as they would have if you had focus on one. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not. So will doing this all at once instead of slowly cause me to get less of a result? Well, that's a good question. And here's a big reason that I like, and I'm a little on the go for it side of life. I always have been. I think it's the Kobe test that puts you in these categories, and one of them is called quick start, and that means you just boom, pull the trigger on stuff. Got an idea, let's go do it. And that's worked out great for me in some areas and horribly in other areas. I just like action. Let's do it. Let's make a decision. Let's go. Can't turn a ship that's not moving. Let's boogie. And one of the reasons I like that and find this to be true in so many instances is when you slow something down over time for no good reason. I just gave you some good reasons to do that, by the way. I'm not against taking things slowly. But sometimes when you're doing things slowly, for whatever reason you're doing that, you don't want to go through the more pain, takes more effort, makes you nauseated, whatever it is. Sometimes there's opportunity costs for that. I've done a fair amount of real estate investing in my life. And sometimes there are some markets that are heating up and you've done your research and it's time to go, put a peg on the board. And sometimes going slow, I mean, you're losing money every day that you wait because there's opportunity cost in waiting. Sometimes people want to change their career and they'll, take one course at night. And sometimes that is a great way because if you don't do it in steps, a lot of things are going to come crashing down. So they have to, in fact, I talked to somebody earlier today who is extremely successful. Extremely successful. And he's extremely successful because in his late 20s, he decided for a career change, or his mid 20s or so, he decided a career change. But he was married, had a family, and he started taking night courses. And he was in night school, basically, he told me, for the better part of 6 years. But he held a lot of other stuff together, and there was good reason for taking those steps. Well, sometimes there's lost opportunity for somebody who does it that way, and they should go grab that MBA or grab that law degree or go grab that college degree or whatever it is and get it done. And so then you can begin to go for it. All right. None of those are right all the time. Sometimes one of them is right and the other one's right. At least might provide you little bit to think about is you're thinking about, do I rip off the band-aid and go for it, all of it? You know, quit my job, go into school, quit my job, move to Hollywood and become an actor, or do I do it kind of gradually?